Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding Mountain. And just recently there was a comment about, actually it was in my Patreon page, and this guy said that he suspects that a lot of the people that talk about these overwhelming imbalances that are created from improper exercise form are probably made up by a lot of people. And I would actually agree with that. I would say two things though, before you switch this video off right away, just two things, okay? Imbalances are just part of the body. You know, there's always one imbalance happening or another. There's always one area that gets strong and then another area that has to catch up. And it's unavoidable to have that happen in the process of evolution. So as your body is getting stronger, it's going to naturally need calibration as it gets stronger. But it's not because you've done something wrong that this happens. And I think that's where a lot of the fear mongering and things that go on with some channels and some people would be false. But the truth is that really natural bodybuilding is about the exercise of bringing up weak links as you get stronger. And you're always trying to figure out where can you get the most benefit? Where does the body need more strength or more flexibility or more stabilization or more just raw muscle mass, right? So you're kind of playing with all of these different variables, and it's normal for you to be strong in one as opposed to another and have to design your workouts or your exercises based on that. So yeah, I like to get away from the whole fear-mongering aspect of health because it's not helpful, and at the same time it's a lot of times not true. A lot of times when people are trying to plant fear in you, it's because they're trying to sell you something. And fear is a great motivator for a lot of people. But when you evolve outside your fear, then you start to look for truth, and now you can't be manipulated quite as easily. So yeah, don't trust stuff. If people are starting to put fear in you, don't trust that. But they might be giving you some useful advice in some cases of what to possibly watch out for along your journey to self-improvement. You know, so when I say, you know, possibly avoid 1 rep maxes with deadlifts, I'm not trying to fear monger you. I'm just saying that, you know, there's just a sliding scale of injuries and trauma done to the body with certain techniques or intensities. That's it. So yeah, in the end, you're going to find out anyway on your own. You know, that's the beautiful thing about this whole thing. I can only, you know, share with you what has worked for me and what hasn't worked. And then you just have to find out where that fits with your own sort of evolutionary path on this bodybuilding thing. But yeah, don't feel bad if you're developing some sort of imbalance or, you know, your biceps are too big in comparison to your triceps or something. That's all normal. That just happens. I'm just going to do a couple light sets of incline flies. And yeah, let's see what else we're going to talk about. So let me just do a set here and we'll go from there. That felt good. It's pretty lightweight, you know, only 70 pounders on a pretty steep incline anyway. Not super steep, but almost 40 degrees, 35 degrees, something like that. But one thing that came to mind as I was doing it is that sometimes you'll notice that using heavier weight almost becomes a fixation, and it's good. It's good for you to progressively get stronger. I mean, I've always mentioned that. But when it comes down to isolation movements, you'll notice that sometimes in an effort to keep a certain weight, you may compromise a specific angle of attack or technique or way of doing the exercise because you're too focused on the weight. So when you're doing isolation exercises, it's not a bad idea to surrender your obsession with weight and really focus on what angle and what technique attacks the muscle the most aggressively. So it's time to surrender the progressive overload aspect of your training in that moment, right? Because you're already getting a lot of that in your compound lifts, you're already pushing for strength and so forth, but it's good when you're really focusing on isolating a muscle to not be focused so much on the weight at that point, but in what technique will help you focus the tension on that specific muscle group. You know, I was doing that with partial barbell curls today, just at the top here and just come down, but I'm forced to use light weight because I'm just keeping that constant tension on the bicep brachii instead of letting it transfer to the brachialis and the brachioradialis, right? So I'm trying to just basically keep the weight like this. And because I was using lighter, I could really focus on keeping that constant tension on a specific muscle group. Now, it doesn't look as impressive. It's not as glamorous as lifting heavy weight, right? But yeah, you can still do that. But there are times when you really want to focus that tension on the muscle in a certain area. You want to focus on a certain muscle group, and sometimes you have to surrender the weight paradigm in order to accomplish that task. Mountain. Now, I think this is where a lot of people get mixed up, where, you know, they do an isolation exercise like I did, and they realize that, wow, you know, technique, it matters so much. It matters so much. And then, of course, they go on the other side of the whole argument where everything has to be super strict and it's all about isolation and technique and all that. And although I agree in certain cases and certain times that is necessary, there are certain times when you're trying to just basically be able to handle heavier loads of weight that you have to concentrate on efficiency. And so with progressive overload, when you're doing compound lifts and stuff, you are trying to get stronger in those lifts. And then therefore, with that extra strength, then you could start to control your movements in a way where you get greater isolation. So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes when you venture into new areas of strength, there is going to be less control with that weight. You're not going to have the same mastery. And that takes time to establish. So because of that time to establish, some people say, oh, I don't have as much control in that weight, so I'm not going to ever go into that territory. But it's necessary in order to go into greater stratospheres, right, of intensity. So at first you gain the strength, and then you learn to control that strength with certain isolation lifts and so forth. But there's going to be certain movements, such as compound lifts, where you're trying to gain strength where the reps won't look quite as pretty. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying to go ballistic and to do them all wrong or put yourself in danger. But what I am saying is that when you're trying to do progressive overload type of training, you're not trying to isolate the muscle in that moment. You're trying to bring in as many muscles as you can to efficiently lift that weight safely. Whereas when you're isolating, sometimes you will put your body into slightly more precarious positions, right? In order to isolate a muscle or in order to put the tensions on a certain muscle. And that's not a good time to be doing progressive overload. So by shifting your way of seeing things, you can see that there is a reason for everything. There is a time and a place for progressive overload, and then there's a time and a place for isolation exercises. And each is important in your natural bodybuilding path. It's not like one is exclusive to the other, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's what I got to say today in today's video. I hope this helps you out in your training, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. And if you need to get hold of me, just go to naturalgalandbodybuilding.com, and thanks to the Patreon supporters, and take care for now. Mountain.